All right, so I've been listening to a lot of people talk about religion as irrational, belief in God as this fairy tale, and in science there's no proof, is what I keep hearing people discussing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a second, let's back this up and look at this from a different point of view. So when I say I believe in God and the Bible, a lot of people shoot back, well, I follow science, as if that's so rational to follow science. And I'm thinking, okay, science changes for one thing. And what people believed 10 years ago, 15, 20, 100, 200 years ago, vastly different today. And as technology changes, science is changing. And we are seeing the complexity of things internally that we didn't see or know before. So, survival of the fittest, right? We have the blood type, and blood type, all these different blood types. Why? Scientists say, why isn't there just one universal blood type? And that's absolutely true. We don't need all of these different blood types to survive, but they're there. And science has shown this to us. And I'm saying that to me is proof that a creative, wild God exists because of these nuances that aren't necessary, but they're there. And to me, it shows a creative God that is doing things, and science is catching up to what God is doing. So we have the irrational God. Sure, we can say that if you want to say that. That's creating different blood types. Sure. Or we could say it's a very creative God, and God is showing us how creative one can be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be rational. Okay, because this is something that I find very offensive when scientists talk as if they really are degrading creativity and the imagination, which is why I love the Bible so much, because it starts in the beginning, God created, and man has been made in the image of God so that we are able to create. And I feel that when things are just dissolved to math and science, which again, I love science, math because of my dyslexia, I'm not so great at, but if we just dissolve everything to math and science and take out all creativity, this world would be just a terrible place to be. Because when you just focus on science and math and you aren't appreciating the imagination and you aren't appreciating God, who is the creator, the ultimate magnus opus creator, you are really taking out the spirit of things. So with music, we have something that's very spiritual and of the spirit realm, when we could just sit back and be entranced in some sort of music that takes us to a different place. Same thing with art. When you look at art and you're visually absorbed in either the paint or the imagery, the hues of something, the composition, this transitions your brain, and there is more to us than just science and math, and that's why we have the soul, the spirit. So when I look at blood, as in a prior video I was talking about, the Bible says that the spirit comes in at the 18th week into the bone marrow, where it was in the liver, and then it transfers to the bone marrow. And that's then where blood starts to be processed. Now, that to me is extraordinary and already testifies to a divine God spirit, that the blood is transferring from the liver and then to the bone marrow. We also have blood types. Now, that has nothing to do with survival of the fittest, right? I mean, blood types, as scientists say, rational scientists say, this seems irrational. Okay, so if you're going to accuse me of being irrational, then sure, I serve an irrational, extremely creative, magnus opus brain spirit God. Because blood types, yeah, that's another sign to me of God, because it is not necessary, it is not part of the survival of the fittest to have different blood types. And that, again, science to me is proving through blood types that there is a God, a divine creator. Then we have to look at the fingerprints and the toe prints and the handprint and the footprint and the 2 different eye prints, because both of your eyes have different eye prints, and your tongue print. And of course, we can look at DNA. And all of this, to me, aren't prints, but signatures, God's signatures on every individual, that there's multiple God signatures, not just one. And the beauty of this to me, again, is there's no reason for the survival of the fittest for fingerprints. None. For thousands of years, people have lived without any need of these fingerprints. But how does it help us in modernity now that we have technology? Well, we can catch criminals faster, right? And we can even take cases that have been, put on the shelf and remained unsolved. Today, we can take that blood sample or those fingerprints and find the perpetrator of that. And also people who have been jailed for crimes that they didn't do. Thankfully, we have the blood and the fingerprints to release people who have been horribly incarcerated as innocents. And so there's the Innocent Project, which I love, and they release people based on the fact of what we have in modern technology, knowing the fingerprints and the blood. So this, to me, is God, because God is helping us in our society today. And people who keep saying religion is irrational, belief in God is irrational, there's no scientific proof, I say BS. I call BS on that, because there is no reason to have all of these fingerprints, tongue print, handprint, footprint, 2 different eye prints, all of this. There's no reason for it. If you want to say that, yeah, but it's called creativity. It's called having a magnus opus, creative artist extraordinaire who is mind-boggling. And I love the verse in the Bible that talks about how the earth is God's footstool. And so God's feet are basically above us. We're looking at God's souls. A double entendre, God's souls. And if we think about the fact that earth is God's footstool, and then we imagine the size of God above that, that's pretty awe-inspiring. It's for people who mock God. Well, people say, oh, the Adam and Eve story, and they didn't die that day. Well, as I've said in a prior video, yes, someone did die that day. The pet they named died that day for their sin, and the covering of that pet's skin was upon them. So yes, and then everybody does die now. So everybody, in my mind, yes, the God you mock, you will meet that God. But all I can say is thank God. God is love. And that's also what the Bible says, because I cannot imagine a world where we would have an unloving God that we ultimately will interact with when we die. And thank God that God is a God of love for all of us. All right. God bless. Love to you all.